Tired of shows that bark and scream at you? This is the show that speaks to you.
Here's the game plan.
It's the Big E Sports Extravaganza, where we go inside the issues, present a variety of topics, and feature some of the biggest sports guests on the planet. Now, here's the one and only, award-winning Elissa Walker-Campbell.
Hey, Elissa Walker-Campbell, welcome back to the Big E Sports Show. My next guest has lived a life shaped by competition, leadership, faith, and resilience. Derek Blackshear's journey has taken him from the world of minor league baseball to entrepreneurship and leadership in the global fitness community as an owner of F45 training. He is now sharing powerful stories from that journey in his new book. It is titled Built for Storms: Unlock the Secrets to Experience Your Most Fulfilling and Fortified Life. Derek challenges the readers to examine the foundations of your lives spiritually, mentally, emotionally, and physically, and strengthen the areas that will determine how they withstand life's inevitable storms. Derek, first time on the show. Congratulations on your book, and thank you so much for carving out some time.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Well, take us back to that moment when you realized, you know what, there's a book inside you. So what life experience convinced you that this message really needed to be shared?
Yeah, well, I guess it transpired from my F45 fitness studio. And it was this sequence of, we're primarily female dominant membership base. But what was happening is we would have wives come in, get healthy, get stronger, get more fit, mindset improved. And I would get these calls from husbands, and it would be like, I don't know what you're doing with my wife, but I love it. She's much better, in a much better place, and I need to come get some of this. So then it was this repeated pattern. Husbands would come in, we'd get them fit. And what I've realized is, just in general, I think this is, I'm going to make a blanket statement, but men are, what I have experienced, are not as strong expressing emotions, feelings, as women typically are. Okay, just a blanket statement. And so what I've realized is that it's hard for men to do that, right? So what we approached is, I approached it was, hey, let's get them physically fit first, more confidence. They're going to feel better about themselves. And then where all of this started was men kept asking me the question, what's next? Hey, Derek, how do I keep getting better? How can I keep improving? I said, well, I don't know, but let's figure it out together. And so from there, I developed these, we had these transformation challenges where we really focused on mindset. And then it was, hey, how can I keep getting better? I'm like, well, I don't know. We'll figure it out. So from there sparked what I call the Fortified Man. It's a backpacking leadership retreat. I'm actually doing, this would be the 10th year this coming summer. And this is where everything really happened. We would get up in the mountains and we would start talking about stuff. You hike a mountain together, you break down walls and barriers. Man, some real conversation was happening. And we, unplugged, no cell phone service. And, I always felt the rules of the game. Guys, this is a safe place to just open up and talk. And what I realized was, more and more men were all struggling with the same challenges. They just didn't know how to express it, didn't know how to talk about it. So then we bring it back, and it just keeps growing in regards to, how do we keep getting better? Then I started my life and performance coaching business, all from this time on the mountain. And then I realized, man, I need to spread this word to more people, more men. There are a lot of men that need to hear this. And so that's really kind of how the book originated. My coaching business is called Fortified for Life. And, this book is written to men. Obviously, the principles and concepts in it can be directed for men and women. But what I originally was going to title it The Fortified Man. And I got some feedback, and maybe this will date the people I got feedback from. But they said, well, when I think of fortified, I think of cereal. And I said, okay, well, that's not what we're going for. And so, then it was Built for the Storm was the one. But then I realized, well, in life, we're not going to be faced with just one storm. There's going to be many storms. And I think all readers can relate to Built for the Storms. Like, we all have storms in our lives. It's inevitable. Scripture talks about it. We've all faced it. And so that's how I landed on Built for Storms, because hopefully if we can become fortified and follow through with the actions I lay out in this book, hopefully we can build a fortified life that can withstand and uphold whatever storms, be coming. And, I want to help be a part of building resilient, faith-driven men at the end of the day.
Well, as you're talking about the title of your book, Built for Storms, it is so powerful. So What are some of the examples inside the book about storms in life and some of the challenges that so many of the men that you're interacting with on these weekend trips, what are they sharing with you? What are some of their biggest struggles and some of those storms?
Yeah, so a lot of it, I lay a quote out in there, a really good book I read by an author named Robin Sharman. I don't remember which chapter off the top of my head, but I put a quote in there. I opened the chapter up with this, and it's the title of the book is called "The Wealth Money Can't Buy." And the quote he puts in there is, "There are a lot of seemingly rich people that are cash rich and life poor." And in my experience in coaching, that's what I've experienced a lot of men with. They've had a lot of monetary success, a lot of worldly success, but they're empty and unfulfilled and maybe lack purpose inside. And the old say, money doesn't buy happiness. I think money can solve the problem of not having money, but I just think a lot of men, fall into that as, I'm going to be happy if, and oftentimes that if is filled with, whatever, have in front of my name, or however much money I have in my bank account. And then I've had multiple clients sit across from me in a meeting and say, Derek, I've been miserable for the last 15, 20 years. They've been insanely successful. But to answer your question a little further, more specifics of, hey, I've sacrificed a lot to get to where I am. And, I just wish maybe my relationship with my kids were better, or my relationship with my wife was better. And so, in the book I lay out, it's called WLWB, When Life Works Best. And I take the 10 ramparts, what I call them, which is faith, family, fitness, finance, focus, frame of mind, fun, fuel, footprint. And what we do is we go out and ask them, hey, when life works best for you in this area. And I challenge them to lay it out. We walk through this as a system. And so, for instance, on the, hey, I wish my relationship with my wife is better. So we say, okay, well, hey, when life works best for that, what does that look like? And let's say it's, hey, we're going on a date twice a month. Okay, great. So then I hold them accountable to that. And we walk through and we start defining what that looks like. And that's what I do in my coaching is, hey, I'm not here to give you the answers. I'm here to hold you accountable and help you, extract those out of you. Yeah. And so that's just some examples of a few things that, that I see often is another phrase I use all the time is often what's desired is not defined. And that's kind of my goal in coaching. And part of the goal with this book is people have desires, but it's not all, we also don't slow down long enough to define what that actually looks like. I wrote this book in a way to where a lot of action would have to take place for you to experience the benefits of it. And that was the big goal. Is I wanted this to be a very action-taking book.
Yes, Derek Blackshear, our very special guest on the Big E Sports Show. The title of his book is Built for Storms, Unlock the Secrets to Experience Your Most Fulfilled and Fortified Life. You talked about being the owner of F45 Training Community, and I just wonder how often, with these physical transformations that take place, does this tie into a deeper emotional and spiritual change that it really buoys them to get on the right path?
Oh, absolutely. It's inevitable. I kind of have this stair-step approach where it's physical, mental, emotional, relational, spiritual. I personally think, as I write in this book, the Zoe life, which is a full life, it really comes through in John 10:10 that the thief comes to steal, kill, and destroy, but I have come to give you life and give it to the full. And man, I love this idea of a full life, a Zoe life. And so again, as I said, I think a full life comes from a spiritual connection with our Savior. But what I've learned is you can't always start there. And what I've learned in coaching is give them what they want so you can give them what they need. And a lot of people come to me because they want that physical transformation. But then as we work through this process, what I've learned is they start to realize, okay, this is a part. This is not the all-encompassing thing is once we get in shape, that's not it. So it just opens up doors. It builds trust. And then we realize okay, there's more to this. But so really that's kind of the stair-step approach of let's get physically fit first. Because it, again, breaks down some walls. We're going to build some trust. And then we're going to go to that next step and get a little bit deeper on a more personal level. And man, it's fulfilling on my behalf. Absolutely love what I do and getting to be a part of this. And just, there's a lot of fulfillment and get to help change someone's life. And man, I love what I do. I'm super blessed and extremely grateful for getting to do what I do.
Derek, you also talk about in the book about identifying the weak ramparts. You just talked about that in our lives. So what are some of those most common weak points that you see in people today? Where are people really struggling?
Yeah, I have it when I start out the ramparts. I use this 10 rampart assessment. And what it's different for everyone. To answer your question, it's different for everyone. And that's one of the biggest mistakes I made in getting into coaching is didn't really know what it was, quite honestly. And when I got into it, I thought that I had to be some guru and I had to have all the answers. And I quickly realized that is not coaching. Coaching is listening and asking questions. And what I learned from this is if I can be a really good listener, my goal is to, which I think, is a goal of should be a goal of every coach, is to extract the best out of each person, right? If you go back and think about the best coaches that you had, my high school coach, Sam Moore, who I can't thank that man enough. He was as good as anyone I've ever met at understanding his players' hot buttons and knowing how to push them. And that takes intentionality. And that's what I've learned. I've taken that from him and use that in my own coaching now is everyone's going to be different. And my goal is I want to extract the very best out of you and let's maximize who God created you to be, period. And that's the approach I take is just really listening and hey, I ask why a lot. Hey, why do you feel this way? Or why do you think that's a good idea? Why do you want to pursue that? And let them really have a connection with that because, again, at the end of the day, to achieve the things that we desire, there's got to be a level of consistency. There's got to be, I call it vision, action, discipline. We got to have a vision, got to know where we're going, create the action of how to get there, and then have the discipline to follow through. And that's what we walk through.
Faith is clearly the central pillar in your book. And so maybe share a little bit about your personal faith and how you evolved through your own life storms.
Yeah, man, I've had many of them. I'll give a shorter version of my own testimony. Didn't grow up a believer. I was not a Christian. Later on, this is, 4 or 5 years ago, my wife and I were part-time with a local called Young. Well, it's a global ministry, but it's called Young Life. And we part-time led the local high school here. And I was giving my testimony, and one of the kids raises their hand. They said, "Oh, you were a creaster." I said, "What? Like, what's a creaster?" They said, "Oh, yeah, you go to church on Christmas and Easter." That was pretty funny, but that really did kind of sum up my upbringing. I have really good parents, but not necessarily followers of Christ, where we consistently had, going to church all the time and had a relationship with Jesus Christ. So faith is absolutely the foundation of my life, and partly because I know what it's like to live life without it. I'm very much a yin and yang, the black and white. I tried to do life by myself and on my own terms, and I quickly realized, okay, this ain't working. So I was a really good baseball player. I kind of go back to how it started. A really good baseball player in high school. My junior year, getting calls from everybody in the country, all major big schools, and started to get sick and didn't say anything about it, didn't want to miss out. So I was getting all this attention. Ended up getting diagnosed with ulcerative colitis and lost 51 pounds and spent my junior summer in the hospital. And man, it was a real bummer because I had made the area code team for baseball. I had 5 or 6 flights to go play on these big tournaments all over the country, and all of that was missed. So I was really just bitter, angry. And during that time, I had people, whether it was sending in calls or coming to visit, they were saying they were praying for me. And at the time, it was more just, all right, thanks, but didn't really think much of it. And I really think that's where God started to work in my life. Was it really got me curious, what is this whole thing about? And so ended up, finally getting back, spent the whole fall of my senior year trying to get healthy, and velocity going back into my senior year was not the same. So those big schools stopped calling, and ended up going to Panola Junior College and go there my freshman year. Ended up finding the Lord. It was cool. A teammate that was at Panola was a rival in high school. He kept inviting me to these devotionals at Panola, and we ended up at Stairwell Chapel, and that name got the name because we were in a co-ed dorm that was insanely loud. The only quiet place we could find was in the stairwell. So we would meet, once a week for a while in the stairwell, and start out 6-8 people and dwindle down to just Philip and I, my teammate. And Philip was the one that led me to Christ. And at that time, I was more of a hearer of the word. I heard the things, but didn't really change the way I lived. From there, I went to I went to McNeese State University. And that's where I got involved with Fellowship of Christian Athletes, FCA. And man, by the name of Steve Sanford, man, one of my biggest mentors, he really is the one that poured into me and first person to teach me the difference between a relationship with Christ and a religion. And man, it really impacted me, and FCA is still dear to my heart today. But it's kind of just a brief kind of story of my journey. And, my faith is, I met my wife in FCA at McNeese, and she's a Christ follower. And man, it's a center part of our life. And, pray that other people get to experience what our Savior's all about.
And then you went on to have a decade-long career of pursuing Major League Baseball. And that's not easy.
Yeah. No, it wasn't easy. I wasn't a guy who signed for a bunch of money. I signed for $1,000. And so it was cool. One of my teammates, Carlos Stanton, who's with the Yankees now, we were teammates. We were drafted together, and we were sitting in the clubhouse. I remember we got our paychecks, and he said, Hey, Black, you want to see my check? And I was like, I don't want to see your check. Uh-huh. That's a lot more, but it was an amazing experience. Some people in my shoes, I did not make it to the big leagues. Played 10 years, and what was cool is I got to experience a lot. I played in winter ball for, I guess, 5 years. And that started in 2011. I went to Venezuela, and then the off season. So for those that don't know winter ball, it's the four major ones are Puerto Rico, Dominican Republic, Venezuela, and Mexico. And from basically October to February, depending on how you do, there's a whole winter league season. What's really cool about this is you're facing some, amazing. In Venezuela, it was 1 through 9 major league roster, and I was having success down there. And had great success in Puerto Rico, and that's really what kept me hanging on. Is I'm getting these guys out. I just need a break. And for me, I was a fringe guy. And what I mean by that, I was never going to be. I was a very average professional. 92, 94 velocity as a pitcher, which is very middle of the pack. I just knew how to pitch. I was durable, and then I didn't know how to quit. And so really, it was an amazing journey. I often struggle post-baseball with, all my peers are 10 years along in their career with their professional career, and I'm basically starting over at 30 years old. What I realize is that the life lessons and on that journey to where I am now, just because of those experiences, and I wouldn't trade it for the world, but what I was going to say is there's a lot of people that have regrets of, wish I wouldn't have done this. I'm teammates. I wish I wouldn't have drank so much. I wish I would have taken care of myself better. And I am so grateful for that. I hang my head high, and I literally was trying to invent ways to get better. If it's out there, I've tried it as far as how to get better, how to increase velocity. And that's just a big lesson I try and teach with young kids and even adults is, just don't have regrets, and don't be I wish I would have guy. Because I just think there's so much to be said about knowing and having the confidence. You can wake up knowing, I did my very best, and it just wasn't part of God's plan for me, and I'm okay with that. And it's a cool place to be.
Hey, we are winding down our time. Author Derek Blackshear is with us. The title of his book is Built for Storms, Unlock the Secrets to Experience Your Most Fulfilled and Fortified Life. And when people pick up a copy of this book, what's the one message that you hope stays with them long after they close it?
I hope it's that they can realize they can have a fortified life as well. It does take work. I often say, well, what does fortified look like? What does it mean? And I'll say it's a fortified man is a person who lives by his principles. He's shaped by his practices, and he's driven by the purpose that he's here for. And that's really what I hope men can say. My tagline for my coaching is rise up, stand firm, and live fortified. And that's what I hope people can gain from this.
Well, Derek, congratulations on the book, an incredibly powerful message, and just, sharing your journey from baseball to business to faith. And there's just so many takeaways, so many lessons, and it's jam-packed. Good stuff. And direct all of our listeners where they can go and get a copy.
Yeah, you can find it on Amazon. If you type in Built for Storms, you can find it there. Also on my website, fortifiedforlife.com. Both of those, you can get it. And yeah.
Good stuff. Thank you so much, Derek. We appreciate you dropping by. Thank you.
Absolutely.
You bet.
Thank you.